Hi there, welcome back to another episode of Dave's Desk at Bible Basics. Today we're looking at the Book of Numbers, so called because it's full of lists and numbers. Not the most exciting. Its Hebrew name is slightly more useful. Its Hebrew name is Of the Desert, and it's called that because it talks about God's people as they're in the desert. If you remember, the Book of Genesis, God sort of starts. The people are born. In the book of Exodus, the people are drawn out of slavery. In the book of Leviticus, they're taught how to worship. And in the book of Numbers, the people are still at Mount Sinai, and God meets with them there, and then he leads them, as their king, and they're his army, and he leads them all the way up to the border of the promised land. And then we have this image of God as the king of his people, about to invade his fallen world and start that process of redeeming the world back to himself. And then his people turn on him. They break their covenant with him, and they refuse to go into the promised land. They refuse to trust in God as their Redeemer, and therefore God sends them back into the wilderness for 38 years. A whole generation of people die out as they refuse to listen to him, and after 38 years they come back to the plains and back to that border of the promised land. And all through this we see this tension of God's relationship with his people, and that question as we see God's wrath poured out upon his own people is, will he leave them, will he forsake them? But he doesn't. Time and again he forgives them. He forgives their faithlessness, their refusal to follow him. He stays with them in the wilderness and provides for them in the wilderness. And we understand, therefore, that God's decision to discipline his people through his wrath, it's not about punishment or God being vindictive. It's about them understanding who God is and what God isn't. So God isn't like an impersonal magical force that can be manipulated to a user's will and then forgotten about. And we see this most clearly in the story of Balaam. And Balaam is this sort of musician. He may have been a musician. He was a magician and a prophet. He was kind of like Moab's version of Moses, and he could make the gods do what he wanted by using the right words and the right sort of magics. And so the king of Moab sends him to sort of curse the people of God. But when Balaam tries to get God to do what he wants, God turns around and makes Balaam bless his people and curse the people of Moab. And we see really clearly that God is not something that we use for our own benefit. He is the king over our lives, and he can ask us and lead us rather than the other way around. And that image of God as king with his people is the really important image from Numbers. And so I think it's good for us to reflect on what it means for God to be sovereign, to know that he is Lord of all and that we cannot hide from him or go where he is not. Thank you for joining us today. Hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.